The silence in our house in Oak Ridge, Connecticut, wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the kind of silence that felt like a held breath, heavy, stagnant, and vibrating with things unsaid. My name is Elias Thorne, and for 12 years I believed I was the luckiest man in New England. My wife Sarah was the kind of woman who made people stop and stare, not just because she was beautiful, but because she carried an aura of absolute, unwavering grace. We had the colonial-style home with the wraparound porch, two beautiful daughters, and a life that looked like a high-end furniture catalog. I'm an architect by trade. I spend my days looking at blueprints, calculating load-bearing walls, and ensuring that the structures I build can withstand the weight of the world. I thought I had applied those same principles to my marriage. I thought our foundation was poured concrete and reinforced steel, but perfection is a fragile thing. It only takes one hairline fracture to bring the whole structure down. For me, that fracture appeared on a rainy Tuesday night in late October. The wind was howling off the sound, rattling the shutters of our perfect home. Sarah had left her phone on the kitchen island to go help our youngest Mia with a nightmare about the lady in the shadows. A notification lit up the screen, a simple, unsent draft that flickered and disappeared. It was enough to make my heart skip a beat. It wasn't the message itself. It was the way she dived for the phone when she came back downstairs. Her face, usually so composed, was flushed. Her eyes met mine for a split second, and in that moment, the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had loved for over a decade, simply vanished. In her place stood a stranger with a secret. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. Here at Family Secrets and Revenge, we know that the truth usually hides in the places we're most afraid to look. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that flicker of panic in Sarah's expression. It was the look of a prey animal sensing a predator, except in this house, I was supposed to be the protector. I waited until her breathing became heavy and rhythmic, the deep sleep of someone who thinks they've gotten away with it. I lay there in the dark, staring at the shadows cast by the oak tree outside our window. They looked like grasping fingers against the glass. As an architect, you learn that buildings don't just fall down, they fail slowly. A leak in the roof leads to rot in the rafters. A shift in the soil leads to a crack in the slab. I realized then that I had been ignoring the leaks in my marriage for years. The way Sarah would take long, hushed phone calls in the garden, her voice dropping to a jagged whisper when I walked by. The way she insisted on handling all our banking, claiming she wanted to save me the stress since I was busy with the firm. I had called it love. Now I suspected it was a cage. I needed to know what was on the other side of that locked door. At 3 a.m., the house was a tomb. I crept downstairs, my bare feet cold on the polished oak floors. I found her iPad in the kitchen, or sitting innocently next to a fruit bowl. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. I'm not a suspicious man, but an architect knows when a wall is leaning. I tried her usual passcode, our wedding date. Denied. I tried the girls' birthdays. Denied. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Then I remembered a date she mentioned once. Years ago, the date her late sister, Martha, supposedly died in a car accident. She had wept when she told me that story, describing the rainy night in Vermont. I tried that date, May 12, 2005. The screen bloomed to life. I felt a wave of nausea hit me. Tucked away on the third page of apps, disguised with the icon of a generic calculator, was a Vault app. I entered the same code. It opened into a gallery that felt like a punch to the solar plexus. There were hundreds of photos. Not of a man, which is what I had braced myself for, but of a boy. A boy who looked exactly like Sarah. He had her high cheekbones, her slightly crooked smile, and those piercing blue eyes. And then I saw the documents. PDFs of bank transfers, school tuition receipts for a place called Blackwood Academy, and a birth certificate for one Julian Jenkins. Mother, Sarah Jenkins. Father, unknown. The next morning, I didn't go to the office. I drove to New Haven to see Dave, a forensic accountant. We sat in his war room, a windowless office filled with 3 monitors, and the smell of industrial-strength espresso. "Elias, take a look at this," Dave said, tapping a screen showing a complex web of transactions. "Your wife didn't just hide a son. She built a financial ghost ship, and she registered an entity called SJ Legacy LLC. But look at the routing numbers. It's tied to your firm's federal tax ID. She's been billing your clients for ancillary design consulting and permit expediting, then diverting those checks directly into an account that feeds a bank in Blackwood, Massachusetts." "Wait," I said, leaning in. "Scroll back to the Smithson project. I remember that billing. I thought it was for the structural engineer." Dave clicked through a spreadsheet. "Nope. June 14th, 2024. $12,450. Billed under Smithson Site Prep. But look at the signature on the authorization form, Elias." He zoomed in. It was my name, written in my exact architectural script. But the T in Thorne had a slight, feminine curl. A curl I had seen 1,000 times on Sarah's grocery lists. My stomach dropped. "Wait, she forged my name on a federal project, Dave?" "She did more than that," Dave replied, his voice grim. "She's been doing it for 12 years. The total? $584,212. Every penny of it untraceable to her, but fully traceable to your firm. If the IRS walks through that door right now, they aren't handcuffing Sarah. They're handcuffing you." The drive to Blackwood felt like traveling through a tunnel of gray static. I told Sarah I had an emergency site visit in Boston. She packed me a ham sandwich and kissed my cheek, her eyes bright and caring. That sandwich sat on the passenger seat like a radioactive isotope. Blackwood was a decaying town, the kind of place where the fog never quite lifts. I found the address from the LLC filings. It was a weather-beaten cedar shingle house with a bright blue door, the kind of charming detail Sarah always loved. I parked a block away, pulled out my binoculars, and waited. I didn't have to wait long. The blue door opened, and a woman stepped out to water some hanging ferns. My heart stopped. It was Martha, the sister I had mourned with Sarah for a decade, the sister whose grave I had visited in Vermont. She looked older, her hair thinner, but it was undeniably her. Then a teenager stepped out behind her. Julian. He was wearing a varsity jacket and laughing. He looked so much like Sarah it was haunting. He was a living, breathing testament to a decade of betrayal. I walked up that gravel driveway, my boots crunching loud enough to alert the neighborhood. Martha saw me first. The watering can slipped from her hand, splashing water across the porch. "Elias," she whispered, her voice cracking. "What are you doing here?" "I'm visiting a ghost, Martha. You look remarkably well for someone who died in a car crash in 2005. Does Sarah pay for the ferns too? Or is that out of the consulting budget?" Julian came to the door looking confused. He had a pencil tucked behind his ear, a nervous habit I had only ever seen Sarah do when she was drawing. "Aunt Martha, who is this?" I looked at the boy. "I'm an architect, Julian. I'm the man who built the house you've been living in, even if I didn't know I was building it. Where is your mother?" She's at work," Julian said, his brow furrowed. "Are you a friend of my dad's?" "What did she tell you about your dad, Julian?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "She said he was a hero," Julian said, his eyes lighting up. "She said he died before I was born, but he left us enough to make sure I'd be okay. She shows me pictures of him all the time, awards he won for building things." He led me inside to the living room. On the mantel was a framed photo. It was a picture of me, an old headshot from my firm's website. She had told this boy I was his dead father. I turned back to Martha, who was leaning against the kitchen counter, hyperventilating. "You let her do this? You let him grow up thinking a living man was a dead ghost? And you took my money to fund the lie?" "She told me you were dangerous, Elias," Martha screamed, her eyes wild. "She said you were a powerful man who would take Julian away and put him in the system if you ever found out he was born out of wedlock. Why, she told me she was protecting us from you." "Protecting you? By stealing $500,000 from my daughters?" I walked over to the golf clubs in the corner. "Whose clubs are these, Martha? My firm's expense account paid for these last year. Sarah told me they were for a charity auction. She gave them to Julian for his birthday. Martha whispered. She said you'd want him to have the best. I don't even know this boy, I yelled. And yet, I've been his father, his provider, and his ghost for 15 years. I drove back to Connecticut in a trance. When I walked through my front door, the house felt like a movie set. The expensive candles, the plush rugs, the photos of us in Paris, it was all set dressing. Sarah was in the kitchen, humming a tune as she stirred a pot of pasta. My daughters, Chloe and Mia, were at the dining table doing their homework. How was Boston? Sarah asked, her voice light and melodic. The foundation was cracked, I said, my voice sounding like it was coming from someone else. Deep, structural cracks, Sarah. The kind you can't just patch with plaster. I think the whole building is going to collapse. She stopped stirring. The spoon stayed still in the pot. She turned slowly, her eyes searching mine. Elias, you're acting strange. Are you okay? I met Martha today, I said quietly. She sends her love. She says Julian is doing great in soccer. He looks just like you, by the way, especially around the eyes. The sound of the pasta spoon hitting the floor was the loudest thing I've ever heard. It clattered against the tile, splashing sauce everywhere. Chloe and Mia looked up, their eyes wide with confusion. Girls, go to your room, I said. My voice was a command, not a request. Now, don't come out until I say so. Once the door upstairs clicked shut, the air in the kitchen turned cold. Sarah didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just leaned against the counter, her face turning into a mask of stone. It was a look I had never seen on her, a look of pure, calculated survival. How long have you known? She whispered. I know about Julian. I know about the LLC. I know about the $500,000 you stole from our daughter's future to fund a life you were too ashamed to tell me about. Tell me, Sarah, was he worth it? Was 12 years of lying to my face worth the house in Blackwood? She finally broke. She started talking, her words coming out in a frantic, jagged rush. She told me about being 19, about a father who threatened to disown her, about Martha being the only one who would help. She claimed she tried to tell me a dozen times, but every time she saw how much I valued our perfect life, she lost her nerve. I did it for you, Elias. I wanted to be the woman you thought I was. I didn't want my past to ruin what we were building. You didn't build anything, Sarah, I spat. You built a facade. You treated me like a client you had to trick into buying a condemned building. You didn't trust me enough to be a husband, so you turned me into a bank. Did Julian know? Did he know I was the one paying for his soccer cleats while you told him I didn't exist? Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Sarah claims she lied to protect Elias's vision of a perfect life. Is a lie ever justified if it's meant to protect someone's happiness? Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story and share your thoughts in the comments. While we were screaming in the kitchen, Chloe, my 12-year-old, had crept back to the landing. She had heard everything. She walked into the kitchen, her face pale, holding her mother's iPad. I found the other folder, Mom, Chloe said, her voice trembling. The one you thought was deleted. I saw the videos of you at the park with the boy. You told us you were at a business meeting. You missed my recital for him. Sarah tried to reach for her, but Chloe flinched away like she'd been burned. Don't touch me. You're a liar. You lied about Aunt Martha being dead. We cried for her every Christmas and you just went and saw her? The silence that followed was heavier than the fog in Blackwood. Sarah looked at her daughter, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not fear of being caught, fear of being seen for what she truly was. I didn't let her stay another night. I checked into a motel and called Dave. I need every transfer document, Dave, every forged signature. I'm going to the district attorney. Elias, I've got something even bigger, Dave said, his voice crackling over the phone. She wasn't just supporting Julian. She was paying Martha a salary of $80,000 a year to stay quiet, and she was using your firm's insurance to cover Martha's medical bills. That's insurance fraud on top of everything else. If we turn this over to the DA, she's looking at 10 to 15 years. I sat on the edge of a cheap motel bed, looking at the photos of my daughters on my phone. They had been raised by a ghost, and now the ghost was about to be exorcised. I hired a high-stakes litigator named Elena. I don't want just a divorce, I told her. I want her removed from the house. I want a full audit. I want the girls protected. We filed the papers that Friday. When the server arrived at our house, Sarah tried to call me 50 times. I blocked her number. I only communicated through Elena. The perfect wife was now a defendant. We filed for an emergency hearing to freeze all assets and secure temporary full custody of the girls. I wasn't playing games. I was demolishing the building to build something honest. Elena told me, "Elias, we aren't just winning. We are going to make sure she never manipulates a soul again." The deposition took place in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the harbor. Sarah sat across from me, flanked by 3 lawyers. Elena leaned in. "Mrs. Thorne, let's talk about the consulting fees billed to the Smithson project. You billed $12,000 for environmental impact surveys. Can you show me those surveys?" Sarah looked at her lawyer. Her lawyer looked at the floor. "And the business trip to Paris in 2023? Elena continued. "We have the photos of you, Martha, and Julian at the Eiffel Tower. Why did you tell your husband you were in Des Moines for a conference on urban planning?" Sarah finally broke. "I deserved that trip. I gave him 12 years of my life. I was the perfect wife. I handled the kids, the house, the social life. I earned that money." "You didn't earn it, Sarah," I said, leaning across the table. "You stole it. From me, from our daughters, and most of all, from Julian." We subpoenaed Martha. She sat in the witness chair, looking like a woman who had finally stepped out of a long, dark tunnel. "Sarah told me Elias was abusive," Martha whispered, her voice recorded for the court. "She said he would take Julian away and put him in the system if he ever found out. She told me the only way to keep the boy safe was to stay dead. I believed her because she was my sister. But then I saw the bank statements. I saw the Paris photos. I realized I wasn't helping her protect a child. I was helping her fund a fantasy." Martha looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Elias. I was a ghost. But she was the one haunting us all." The judge didn't hold back. "This isn't just a case of a hidden child, Mrs. Thorne. This is a decade-long scheme of financial fraud and emotional abuse. You have treated your husband as a source of revenue rather than a partner. You have manipulated your family and your professional environment to sustain a fantasy." The judgment was a total victory. I was awarded the house, full custody of the girls, and a massive judgment for the dissipated assets. Sarah was ordered to vacate the premises within 48 hours. She left with 2 suitcases and a rental car. The perfect life she had lied to protect was gone, replaced by the cold reality of her own choices. But the real justice porn moment? The DA was sitting in the back of the room. As soon as the judge finished, they walked up and served Sarah with a warrant for felony embezzlement and identity theft. She was led out in handcuffs. It's been a year since the divorce. I still live in the house in Oak Ridge, but it feels different now. The perfection is gone, replaced by something realer. Chloe and Mia are in therapy, and they're doing better. They finally met Julian. At first it was awkward, but Julian is a good kid. He's starting community college next semester, and I'm paying for it, not through a hidden LLC, but openly. He comes over for dinner once a month. Seeing him sit at the table with his sisters is the only thing that makes the last 12 years feel like they weren't a total waste. Julian told me, "I never knew what a real home was until you found that folder, Elias." If you were in Elias's shoes facing a situation like this, where your entire marriage was built on a lie, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm still an architect, but I don't build skyscrapers anymore. I design small, sustainable homes. I've learned that a foundation doesn't need to be massive to be strong. It just needs to be honest. Sarah is serving her sentence in a minimum security facility. She sends letters sometimes, still trying to explain, still trying to play the victim. I don't read them. I have a new blueprint now. And for the first time in my life, I know exactly what's behind every wall. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. This story is a reminder that the people we love are often the ones we know the least. If this story moved you, please give this video a like and subscribe to Family Secrets and Revenge. When we bring you the most intense real-life betrayals and the justice that follows. Until next time, keep your eyes open.